How's it going, Spare Parts Army? I'm your average infantryman, Cappy. You look like I could offer you a brand new 2020 Type 99A Chinese-made battle tank. This bad boy goes faster, needs less crew than your filthy old M1 Abrams that I saw you pulled up in. Does your country need to operate heavy armor in remote mountainous terrain? Does it need to be lightweight because your crumbling bridge infrastructure is falling apart? Does it need to be cheap because skyrocketing inflation got you broke as all get the f*** out? Why do I have a southern accent? The People's Liberation Army operates a few different types of tanks, but their crown jewel is the heavy-duty Type 99A, which is starting to show more influence from Western tank designs than old Russian Soviet ones. The fact of the matter is, China's new tank has been a real mystery. Until now. Thankfully, an online video gamer leaked real-life pictures of classified information on the Type 99A because he had no other choice. He needed to win an argument on a War Thunder gaming forum about the weapon's real-life specifications. Do you have any idea how much money you could have sold those photos to the Pentagon for? You could have bought so many tank skins in War Thunder. What are you doing? The gaming forum deleted them immediately, but not before a defense journalist on Twitter noticed and tweeted it out. The ensuing memes are unbeatable. Nothing beats the memes that come out of a catastrophic breach of Chinese military OPSEC. Western intel agencies right now getting ready to feast on all that Type 99 weapons data. Delicious. It turned out that these photos may have been floating around online already, but let's take a look at the leaked weapons data about the DTC-10-125, which is an advanced army tank round that is used by the Chinese military. I did all of the research and I consolidated it here for you. You're welcome, lazy officers watching this at the Pentagon. Nah, they only watch ironically. This round is a 125mm armor-piercing dart-like sabot ammo that, according to the translated Chinese texts, fires at 1,760 meters per second, or about 5,700 feet per second, which is 100 meters per second faster than the Abrams rounds. The accuracy information is plus or minus 15 degrees as the median error, and it can fire a group of 3 shells into what looks like about a 9 by 9 inch radius at 2,000 meters. The images leaked show the entire design schematic of the round. Usually NATO rounds come in one single piece, but you'll notice that because the Abrams doesn't use an autoloader, these come in separate pieces. The Type 99 can likely fire 8 rounds per minute. That's 2 more faster than the most Western counterpart tanks. China wanted to keep this advanced capability top secret so the West wouldn't know exactly how to counter it. The specifications leaked here show that it can cut through 220 millimeters of steel when it hits at an angle of 71 degrees. Obviously, when a tank round hits at an angle, it's going to be less effective. So analysts believe it can go through about 960 millimeters at a distance of 1,000 meters, which would be further than most engagements have been in Ukraine.
I mean, I have some graphs I can show you. If you pay attention to these patterns here, you can see on the graphs. I made these on my computer.
Wow.
The new information tells us that this new munition is better than the old DTW-125 from China. In the past, American tanks had the advantage of denser depleted uranium ammo, which could cut through about 15% more armor than opposing technology. This leak seems to suggest that the Chinese Type 99A tank is already capable of firing depleted uranium shells. The poster of this leak information will be able to spend the rest of their life in a Chinese state prison with the satisfaction of knowing that they were correct. The round is better in real life than it is in the video game. Worth it! In addition to this leak, I want to look at what kind of fighting doctrine the PLA is going to use on the battlefield. We need to analyze all of the information that the open source military intelligence community has been clever enough to figure out here, because the tank experts have reverse engineered what this tank's true abilities are. If China wants to project power globally, they need a next generation tank that's capable of taking and holding on to land. This recently released research paper from the headquarters of the Department of the Army, appropriately and simply titled Chinese Tactics, goes in depth on China's recent tank tactics and the changes that they've made with the Type 99A. If China copied their equipment largely from the Russians in the past, they've chosen to copy their tactics and organization structure from the US Battalion Task Force concept. I'm flattered. Combined Arms Battalions is an extremely new development for the PLA organization, so let's take a look at how they're integrating tanks into the bigger picture. Each Combined Arms Battalion in China mixes company-level infantry and armor units along with air defense systems. This way it's meant to function as an independent unit. Each Chinese battalion has 10 to 14 tanks, which means that they have enough of these modern Type 99A tanks to outfit about 20 different battalions. While they've been able to produce 1,200 of the Type 99, they have run into problems with mass producing the Type 99A2. It's not as bad as with the T-14 Armada in Russia, where they've only been able to build 20 of them. China has been able to create 314 of the Type 99As. But they are located in China's Spearhead Armored Division. It's not in a rear training unit somewhere, so they are fully operational today. This is a setback in production that largely has to do with the fact that the amount of the Chinese defense budget has been shifted to the Air Force and the Navy. They're taking priority over tanks right now. This page reveals why China wants their tanks to not engage in close combat and why they use long-range missiles fired out of the turret. China's armored fighting doctrine is designed entirely to prevent the enemy from engaging in close contact where they think they wouldn't have an advantage. China's warfighting strategy with the Type 99A tank is better than what the Russian army decided to do, according to the study of their tactics. Chinese commanders prefer to place their tanks out front while moving over open terrain. But if terrain is more urban or dense, or the enemy has effective anti-tank capabilities, then the Chinese document here, it says that they would use their tanks deployed in the rear for support while positioning their infantry out front, something that the Russians didn't do in Ukraine. In order to understand why I believe the Type 99A is actually a threatening tank, we need to look at its origin story. China was first introduced to tanks after World War I in the 1930s, when they had to buy foreign-made vehicles from the US and the Soviet Union. This is because their manufacturing ability was incredibly weak at the time. They had very few factories. Their entire society didn't have an industrial core that was necessary to make armored vehicles. So you gotta consider, China's coming from this background of playing catch up with production. They're finally at a point in their history now where they're powerful enough for the first time to create new solutions. It's a fork in the road for their forces. Their forces are forked. So the design of the Type 99A tank can be traced all the way back to the early 1990s to a second generation prototype called the Type 92 series. This tank, like a lot of Chinese tanks that came before it, was based heavily on Soviet design. The chassis particularly was almost identical to the Soviet T-72, but it used Chinese subsystems. This was the predecessor to China's third generation tanks. It used a 125mm smoothbore cannon with an autoloader and modular composite armor, which are key components of the Type 99A tanks to this day. The impressive thing about Chinese military equipment that could potentially put them in a strong position is that they're uniquely situated to take the best pieces from Western and Soviet technology and mix it with their own strengths. The only thing holding the PLA back from doing that, in my average infantryman's opinion, is themselves and their systems that limit innovation.
I'm escaping to the one place that hasn't been corrupted by capitalism. Space!
In the 1980s, Chinese tank development benefited from Western technology that they imported during this time period when they weren't so friendly with Russia, but they were cool with the US. This, for instance, is how they came across in the 1980s. They were able to get the best German-designed diesel engines. The Type 99 went into service starting in 2001. The design philosophy behind it works perfectly for China because it's lightweight, relatively cheap. It costs $2.6 million each, which is a lot more than my lunch money, but peanuts compared to the roughly $6 to $9 million plus for an American M1 Abrams. When one of your greatest strengths as a country is your population size, then you want equipment that can leverage that manpower resource. Cost efficiency was a key consideration to the Type 99A, and one way to keep the vehicle cheaper and maintain its lightweight was by using explosive charged lining around the tank. When an impact of an enemy shell hits the tank, this explosive charges around the tank stop it from penetrating. This ERA solution is often a hint that the composite armor underneath is lacking. But if your strategy is to have massive amounts of tanks to overwhelm the opponent, you're hoping it won't matter, and you're not planning to take multiple hits. If China went to do an amphibious invasion of Taiwan, they wouldn't want a massive 60+ ton tank like the Abrams getting stuck on the beachhead. In order to overwhelm a defending force, they would need more mobile and volume instead of high-tech lumbering complexity. This is part of the reason why it's difficult to compare the Abrams to the Type 99, because each tank was purpose-built for a different kind of warfare. Granted, they could use the lighter, new Type 15, but that has a much smaller cannon. In 2011, the improved Type 99A model became the standard deployed variant in the People Liberation Army ground forces. China had worked hard on creating the infrastructure necessary to make tanks with zero dependence on foreign industry. They stumbled with disappointing results in the original Type 90, but I believe they're at a point now where those initial growing pains have been worked out. It's no secret that China wants to become a military superpower. They fell behind just a bit during the Cold War, but President Xi Jinping announced in 2017 all of China's armed forces will be fully modernized by 2035, and that China expects to become a world-class military power capable of fighting and winning wars by 2049. In 2015, the Chinese Ministry of Defense released their first public-facing white paper, and in it they outline exactly what their plan is with the Type 99A. Not in so many words, but if you read between the lines, it's there, I promise. I swear I'm not seeing shit again. So China says it's all about informationalization in that paper. They explain how their plan is to be fully mechanized by 2027. They're using the term mechanized a little differently than we do here in the US. They're using that term to mean fully integrated with modern encrypted GPS and communication systems. It's kind of an important prerequisite to combined arms warfare. And the Type 99A, with its new electronic systems that we're going to get into, is the first tank to achieve this for them. China believes that future wars will be determined by the army that has the best information on the battlefield and the soldiers who have the ability to coordinate based on that intelligence. The problem is, no matter how much money you throw at the defense industry, there are still some abilities that can't scale faster than a decade. It takes time to train Chinese troops on new tanks. It takes time to go through each new iteration, and all of this is extremely expensive. The Type 99A weighs 55 tons, which is about 8 less than the Abrams, making it more nimble. The reason China went in this direction was because they had learned from their original post-war Type 59 tank that heavy vehicles would have a difficulty in operating in the geographic location of southern China, where it's mostly mountains, rice paddy fields, and multiple rivers that have no bridges. For this reason, this tank, the Type 99, can be used with a snorkel to ford rivers that are about 2.5 meters deep, so long as it's been maintained. The American tanks never expect to have to cross a deep river by fording, so they have the advantage of not needing to be designed to be watertight, and I've never seen a snorkel for an Abrams, although I heard they exist. In order to power through obstacles, the Type 99A uses a 150 HP liquid-cooled V12 twin-turbo diesel 33.9-liter 150 horsepower engine. The engine isn't so important because of how fast it can go. It's more important because it tells us its max capacity for electricity. The major bottleneck or limiting factor for modern tanks is not having enough electricity to power all of the complex systems like a fire control targeting system and active protection systems that can shoot down incoming missiles automatically. All of that requires a lot of power be drawn. They also increased the protection from 600 to 700 millimeters of steel, which adds weight and requires more power. It also gives us a point of reference to the fact that the mysterious Type 99A2 armor must be better armored than at least 700 millimeters. The latest American M1 Abrams tanks, the M1A2, are much bigger than the Type 99. The Abrams is about 7 feet longer and nearly 18 tons heavier. This makes it slower and less fuel efficient than the 99A. The Abrams can only get up to about 42 miles per hour and travel 265 miles on a single tank of fuel. The Type 99A is relatively fast for a heavy tank. It can reportedly reach speeds of up to 47 miles per hour on roads, 33 miles per hour off-road, and it can travel up to 400 miles on a single fuel tank. It's got torsion bar suspension, and it's operated by a crew of 3, one less, a driver, gunner, and commander. No need for a loader on this crew.
It still hits just as hard. Trust me when I say the Type 99A is a must-have for any growing superpower. If you're not convinced yet, take solace in the fact that everything mass-produced in China is guaranteed for its exceptional quality, workmanship, and its tendency to never fall apart after using it just once.
So what makes this thing a next-generation tank, technically speaking? Chinese officials have spoken with great pride about how this is their first information technology tank. But what does it mean by that? The question brings us to the fire control targeting system. The Type 99 has hunter-killer capability, meaning that the commander can view their own independent sight that coordinates with the gunner, who's using a 1A45T fire control system with thermal sights and ballistic computer that has crosswind sensor data. All of that gets fed into the firing computer. The tank
has an 11x and 5x view magnification options. The crew will now have digital quality displays with real-time tracking of friendly and enemy vehicles. This is standard in American vehicles and has been for a while, but we've seen many Soviet-era equipment was never upgraded to this, so it's interesting to see that China is investing in these new abilities. Even though this tank uses a Soviet-inspired chassis, it has a welded turret similar to the way that most Western turrets are. This again shows us that the PLA takes the best possible of both worlds whenever possible. The advantage of this system is it can control guided missiles that are fired through the tank's main gun in midair, and it reaches the target. The gunner can lock onto a target from 5 kilometers away, giving it that standoff distance, which is part of its tactics. Everything in this tank is stabilized and capable of working under adverse weather conditions day or night, so you can shoot it while moving. The PLA claims it has a digital map interface, GPS, and encrypted laser communication system. I'll leave the room for the possibility that this might not be true, but I haven't witnessed the Chinese military outright lie or exaggerate weapons capabilities in the way that we've seen the Russians do. The main weapon is the giant ZPT-98 125mm smoothbore with a carousel-style autoloader. Other tanks, like the American M1 Abrams, require someone to load the turret manually, which has its advantages and disadvantages. This weapon system is again derived from Russian T-72s, TA-46 tank gun, and MZ autoloader. In this case, being derivative has its advantages. It's backwards compatible. The 125mm gun is compatible with Russian and ex-Warsaw packed ammunition, as well as China's homemade ammo, and the last thing you want to do is run out of ammo in a war. One of the 99A's many forms of defense against enemy weapons is a laser self-defense weapon, or LSDW. This laser system detects enemy lasers and then sends its own laser right back at them to disrupt the enemy gunner, missiles, helicopters, tracking systems. It can even be used to jam or confuse other lasers, which is why it's sometimes called the laser dazzler. Remember that kid in high school who used to play with the laser pointer in class? Imagine if the teacher noticed that kid and pointed a much bigger laser right in the kid's eye to dazzle him, or permanently blind him in that case. Oh, come on, that kid deserved it. A lot of internet sleuths have tried to crack the case of Type 99A's armor. One of the most in-depth looks that I've found is fightingvehicles.com. The biggest thing to note here is that these next generation tanks use modular armor, so it can be swapped out for heavy or light plates. This is the kind of solution that a country that wants to project its influence globally would use, because they want to reserve the ability to make their tanks fit a wide range of scenarios. Regional powers need their tanks to be built in one specific way, but global powers need their tanks to be easy to transport far and then armor in different configurations. It's also useful to be replaced easily if it's damaged. We see in the heaviest configuration an estimated 1,200 millimeters of steel armor in the front of the tank, which would likely stop a round fielded by any enemy tank or shoulder-fired missile in the world. So is the Type 99A tank all hype? Probably not. It's got a lot of things going for it. It's relatively cheap to make, it's light and very maneuverable for such a powerful tank, and it's got advanced fire control, radar, and communication systems. The thing is, it's not really a battle-tested one like the M1 Abrams. In fact, the People's Liberation Army hasn't engaged in ground warfare since 1979, so pretty much every piece of Chinese army equipment is untested. This, combined with the secretive nature of the PLA, and all of the militaries for that matter, make it hard to know exactly what the 99A can do at this point. One thing is for sure, the Type 99A main battle tank is a huge step forward in modernizing the People's Liberation Army. It's concrete proof that China has started the goal of modernizing their armed forces by 2035. It's not all talk. They probably don't deal with the level of corruption that the Russian military is dealing with, so when they say they're making something, I listen. They've got the attention of the rest of the world, and specifically the attention of the United States. In August of 2021, a replica of the Type 99A was spotted being transported on a highway in Arkansas. No one can really say for sure what the replica was for. Maybe an eccentric American is building and collecting replica tanks, but more likely it was built by the US military for intelligence or training purposes. Hopefully all this remains hypothetical and we never have to find out how the 99A fares against other tanks in ground warfare. Hopefully it's all hype, but either way, China's Type 99A main battle tank has got the world's attention.
Hey Spare Parts Army, thanks a ton for watching. I really appreciate your time. It means a lot to me. If you get a chance, please check out this video here. That would be nice if you can. Thank you, and I'll see you guys soon. Ta-ta.